Hello, good afternoon. Welcome back. It's lovely to see you. Welcome to those who are watching us online. Thank you for rejoining us here, and thank you for joining us again in the room. I set you a bit of a challenge before the break. Quick show of hands. Who managed to get their planting challenge done? Yes. Look at that. I have to say a lot of big smiles and a lot of pride actually with walking home with a particular seed of whatever that is. And I hope you've managed to get more contacts in your contact book as well. We had some brilliant stories before the break. And I know that actually out in the coffee break, people were talking about those stories and saying how good it was to hear those stories of risk and resilience from the farms, from the actual field, and what people are doing, what young farmers, young female farmers are doing to look to the future and to put those strategies in place to ensure that they can thrive and that generations to come can thrive. And we had a really interesting conversation afterwards. So with all that in mind, I'd like to introduce our next conversation on this stage. We are going to focus again on how to support sustainable and resilient farm systems. And we're going to try and bring everything together in real time and look at how the policies work into this as well. So bringing it all together for, I think, a fascinating conversation. So please welcome on stage your moderator for this session, Anna Gumbau. Anna.
Thanks, Sasha. Thank you very much, Sasha, for the introduction. And hello, everybody. A very warm welcome to this very exciting session today in the first day of the EU Agri-Food Days. My name is Anna Gumbau. I'm going to be delighted to be joining you and guiding you through this session. Over the course of today, we have been talking about securing Europe's agriculture, food and agriculture. And we've been diving deep into the resilience perspective. And in this session, we're going to be bringing sustainability and market incentives to the equation. I don't need to remind you about the many, many challenges that the agri-food sector faces, from adapting to climate change, to environmental pressures, dependency on finite natural resources, droughts, natural disasters. And addressing these issues and adapting to it is critical for sustaining the sector's future viability and competitiveness. So today we are going to be discussing around how market incentives can drive sustainable practices and how favorable conditions can be created to enhance these initiatives. So the way that it's going to be working over the course of this session, I'm going to bring my speakers here on stage. I have a few questions prepared for them. But worry not, because we will also have time to address any of your questions. So you can, of course, input your questions via Slido. We have the QR code and also the hashtag EU Agri-Food Days when you log into slido.com. For those of you who are either joining us online or joining us in person but are a bit too shy to take the floor, or those of you who are here in the room and would like to take the floor, I will give you the opportunity to do so as well. So let me start by welcoming each one of the speakers one by one. I will introduce each one of them one by one, so I would like all of you to give them a big round of applause, starting with the president of IFOAM Organics Europe, Jan Plage. Welcome. The first seat over here, Jan. Joining us as well is the General Director at the Centre National Interprofessionnel de l'Économie Laitière, Caroline Helaisen-Héron. Welcome. You can take either seat, Caroline. Thank you. We also have with us the Director of One Planet Business for Biodiversity, an initiative of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, Stefania Avanzini. Welcome. Stefania can join us over here. We also have with us a dairy farmer in Western France, as well as a member of the European Coordination Via Campesina, Mathieu Courgeot. Welcome. Over here, Mathieu, thank you. And joining us as well is the EU Agriculture Policy Director at Greenpeace European Unit, Marco Contiero. Welcome. And Marco, you can join me over here. All right, then. So I'm going to start with the first round of questions for each one of you. I would like to hear Because we've already been hearing what some of the main challenges in the transition towards sustainability for the agri-food sector are, but if you would highlight one challenge in particular, if you would highlight one idea to the audience to warm us up, which one would it be? Maybe we can start with you, Caroline, since you are the first one seated over here. I also understand that you're going to be speaking in French.
Yes,
So those of you who need the interpretation devices can already put them on. We'll give you a couple of seconds. Thanks also, by the way, to the team of interpreters joining us in this session.
So you just want one sentence?
One idea, let's
One
say.
idea.
I can give you a minute or
key-
two, but yeah.
Mon idée maîtresse, c'est que on n'arrivera pas à faire la transition si on n'est pas collectivement engagé sur la base de règles communes.
Merci. C'était, that was very succinct, straight to the point. Thank you very much, Caroline. This leaves us more room for discussion. Jan,
Yeah.
from the organics perspective.
So my main message, which I will take up, is transition in difficult times, and with so many interactions of so many global and local challenges, has to be faced systemic. And systemic means to really understand the interactions of markets, of policies, of all the entrepreneurs, and to not only to describe the challenges, but really find systemic solutions. And I hope we will discuss some of that pathways.
We will. Thank you. Stefania.
I will go with one opportunity and one challenge. And the first opportunity that I see, and for me is that really excites me the most, is that more resilient and more sustainable farming models are more competitive, are more profitable. And that's the opportunity that I see, is like you see the comparison is renewable energy and fossil-based energy. And the main challenge we have today is that we have a very disjointed and scattered incentives in a very fragmented sector. And how do we channel them all together to create comprehensive financing bundles? So like bundles, I call it sometimes the one-stop financing shop. And there I see is one of the biggest opportunity and challenges that I see.
Thank you, Stefania. Mathieu?
Moi, je dirais que je vais parler en français, pardon aussi. Moi, je dirais que la transition, en fait, c'est pas un choix qu'on a, c'est une obligation. Moi, je vois sur ma ferme tous les dégâts qu'on a à cause du changement climatique, mais aussi de la baisse du nombre d'agriculteurs, nous poussent à s'adapter et à changer. Et donc, nous, ce qu'on voulait dire aujourd'hui, c'est qu'on est dans une situation quand même compliquée. Aujourd'hui, en France, il y a toutes les mobilisations agricoles qui ont repris, notamment sur des problématiques sanitaires, et qu'en fait, cette problématique sanitaire, c'est juste une étincelle, et que ça couvre depuis longtemps. On a eu les mobilisations agricoles il y a 2 ans, et on n'a pas réussi à répondre vraiment aux préoccupations des agriculteurs. Et donc, on a un contexte international qui a aussi beaucoup changé, et donc nous, notre demande, c'est de sortir des contradictions. On ne peut pas être à la fois poussé pour être sur des marchés à l'international, être compétitif sur ces marchés et demander de la transition. En fait, ça ne fonctionne pas. Et donc, nous, on dit, mais il faut absolument aller vers la transition agroécologique, mais en même temps sortir du cadre libre-échangiste, et là je parle bien sûr du Mercosur qu'il faut absolument stopper, pour donner les moyens aux agriculteurs de faire les transitions. Voilà, cette ambition libre-échangiste, elle n'était déjà pas très adaptée pour tout un paquet de paysans. Elle l'est encore moins avec le nouveau contexte international. Et donc, nous, ce qu'on dit, c'est qu'il faut de l'autonomie stratégique pour combler toutes les hyperdépendances au soja, aux engrais qu'on peut avoir sur les marchés internationaux. Et c'est ça qui permettra aux agriculteurs aussi de faire les transitions environnementales.
Thank you. Merci, Mathieu. So we've been speaking about common rules, responding to farmers' concerns, to build a strategic autonomy. Marco, what would you say?
Unfortunately, I have to focus on... Can you hear me?
No.
I don't think so.
Maybe now? Try now?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can continue? Okay, I'm not moving. Unfortunately, what I have to denounce is a lack of political will. Living and working in Brussels, I have seen a time that has changed many things. We mentioned biodiversity at the end of the last session just because we got a question. There is no currently political interest in pursuing a serious transformation of our food system towards sustainability. It was in the past, it is not now. And I think this has to be corrected absolutely with urgency, because the costs that our societies are paying already now because of climate change, because of biodiversity losses, because of water pollution, are immense. We have every single week an institution that calculates that. Last week was for the Netherlands. There has been a calculation that Dutch farming, which is very good and competitive, provides the economy of the Netherlands with 13 billion every year. Yet they cause 19 billion in societal costs, mainly environmental costs. It means a net loss of 5.3 billion every single year. Now, I'm happy to hear that there will be a 1 billion euro less of bureaucracy. Everyone is against bureaucracy. But can we look at the dozens of billions that we're spending every single year because of the ignorance of the impacts of climate change, of droughts, on floods, which we are now addressing, but we don't factor in the way in which we value food in our system, and I hope we'll be able to talk about it later.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, thank you. So we're bringing, as you said, the lack of political will into the mix. Now since we've discussed the challenges, let's move towards what can be done. So how can we facilitate investment for a sustainable, resilient, and competitive transition in agriculture? And I would maybe like to pick up already, because this has come up through Caroline and through Stefania on the question of harmonization and common rules. Maybe could you elaborate a bit further on that? Maybe Caroline, we can start with you again.
Oui, merci. Alors, le temps que tout le monde puisse mettre le casque. Effectivement, je dirige l'interprofession laitière en France, qui regroupe les associations qui représentent les producteurs de lait, les coopératives laitières, les industriels privés et les acteurs de la grande distribution et de la restauration, pour mettre en place des actions d'intérêt collectif pour les 40 000 fermes et les presque 500 000 emplois de la filière laitière en France. Et dès 2009, l'idée a jailli dès 2009, et aidée à partir de 2013, à partir d'un programme LIFE, nous avons développé un programme qui s'appelle Ferme laitière bas carbone, qui permet d'avoir des outils de diagnostic et des points d'amélioration sur l'ensemble des fermes laitières en France. Parce que nous partions du constat que sur cet intérêt général, cette attente du consommateur, du citoyen, il fallait mettre en place des programmes de terrain adaptés qui permettent à la fois de mesurer les impacts, de les calculer, et ensuite de pouvoir être en démarche d'amélioration, tant sur le point de vue de l'atténuation de l'impact, donc c'est le programme Ferme laitière bas carbone dont je pourrais vous reparler tout à l'heure, que de la partie adaptation au changement climatique, avec un programme également qu'on a mis en place pour que chaque éleveur, chaque agriculteur dans sa région, chaque industriel puisse avoir accès à la modélisation de l'impact du changement climatique sur son territoire. Donc ça, c'est le premier point pour nous, c'est à la fois mettre en place des programmes adaptés au terrain, mettre en place ces diagnostics le plus possible sur l'ensemble des acteurs. On en est à 50% aujourd'hui, on l'a mis en place en 2019 de manière généralisée, et on espère 100% d'ici 2-3 ans, 100% des fermes diagnostiquées connaissant leur impact. C'est évidemment communiquer sur le dispositif, parce que ça peut paraître comme un contrôle supplémentaire. Non, c'est comment après mettre en place des outils, et je vous rejoins, qui nécessairement sont couplés avec des améliorations de la compétitivité. Réduire sa consommation d'eau, réduire sa consommation d'énergie, améliorer l'autonomie alimentaire, améliorer le recyclage. Quatrième point, c'est de pouvoir donner aux acteurs une vision de moyen et de long terme. Et là, je rejoins l'objectif des politiques publiques, la nécessité de donner des objectifs de moyen et de long terme clairs, ambitieux, et mon dernier point, accompagnés par des outils réglementaires qui soient positifs et qui soient adaptés, justement pour être incités plutôt qu'être contraignants. Et je pourrais y revenir plus en détail tout à l'heure.
Bien sûr. Merci Caroline. Thank you so much. Then maybe let's move again to Jan. Maybe a second round. What do you think how can market incentives then support the transition towards more sustainable agri-food systems, also from the perspective of the organic sector. What do you think, Ken?
Yeah, when you look at our development for the last decades, so that was from the beginning on, were farmers group, producers groups who were asking themselves, are we on the right track? Or how can we change our production system? So, and that was 50, 60, 70 years ago already. And my home association, Bioland, was founded in 71, so more than 55 years ago. And they started with a farmer's own brand to show to consumer what they will do. So you can imagine 55 years ago, nobody was talking what is organic agriculture or biological agriculture. And in that context, in many European countries, we establish a self-understanding that farmers has to care for their markets and for remuneration of what we today call sustainability, what was not discussed decades ago, to sell it and to give it a brand and to give it an added value in the market. And today, I think it's a whole success story with official acknowledgement. Today we celebrate the EU Organic Day in September every year. We have organic awards. We are in every country. We have mandatory schemes for public support. Up to public procurement. And I think it's one of the best practice examples how to co-create between policymakers, public support, and economy and farmers a market-based solution or a market-driven solution. So consumer, you all know, if you talk to consumer scientists, a consumer wants as simple as possible. So if we do the same with climate balances and we collect a lot of data of every farm, but most of the consumers are not interested in details. They just want to be safe. They need a simple message. They need to understand what's right and what's maybe wrong for them, for their health or for the environment. And I can just tell you as a last message of the figures and of the mood in the farming community, in the organic farming community, the last 2-3 years, when this deregulation or this backlash away from an ecological perspective of transition. Came that many farmers are missing a long-term perspective. So all what we experience in transition, I was an advisor myself for 15 years, giving advice to conventional farmers in their transition period. And the only question is, so what is the long-term perspective? Not what will I lose in the first 2-3 years. This is important too, and you need a very good plan. But for farmers, it's interesting. What will happen in 5, in 10, or in 15 years? And is my investment really sustainable? So if you ask for market-driven developments, and that's one of the main contradictions, we should really look into details, is how to connect volatile markets, insecure markets, with a need of long-term investments. And there we can learn quite a lot from the organic success story.
Thank you. That's a very important interplay indeed between market volatility versus bringing this long-term perspective, which I hope we can also get to explore in the panel as well. Stefania, you mentioned harmonization as one of your keywords.
Yes.
What does that mean in practice?
Yes, and I also want just to echo what Jan was saying is I think effectively long-term, as agriculture in sustainable and resilient agriculture model are long-term investments, and Dirk was mentioning also in the previous panel, long-term offtake agreements, so long-term agreements where buyers of agricultural raw materials actually engage with their suppliers is effectively an important measure to take. And we were talking about the importance of harmonization to send also common signals. You were mentioning what you have done on the label bas carbone, and just to stay always in the dairy sector, there is another collective called the Future Fit Dairy Initiative, where larger dairy cooperatives like Friesland Campina, Arla, but also Danone and Rabobank have actually aligned on common frameworks and common tools to measure sustainability across their sustainable programs. And this is an example of how harmonization on measurement can then attract private sector funding and financial actors funding, and also send the right signal to policymakers. And on that front, I think the next year's the On-Farm Sustainability Compass could be a very important tool to drive that alignment. Another effort there, because I just want to call it out, because more than 200 agribusinesses are involved, is in the SAI platform sustainability framework for regenerative agriculture, another initiative that tries to drive harmonization and coherence on measurement. And it's just not to measure for the sake of measuring. It's always effectively to try to measure and valorize and then be able to unlock funding. Because if we talk about some of the main challenges that we have, for sure there is a financing gap. So we need to increase the number of investors and the number of investments in agriculture. And to be able to do that effectively, one of the key prerequisites is let's align on what we measure and value.
Thank you, Stefania. And Mathieu, you've said that sustainability is not a choice.
Yeah.
So what do you need in practice? How can we support? What do you need to be supported in this transition towards a more sustainable agriculture? Yeah.
Moi, je pense qu'il faut écouter les demandes et les préoccupations des petits et moyens agriculteurs qui constituent la vaste majorité des agriculteurs en Europe. Et suite à la crise d'il y a 2 ans, la principale revendication qu'on avait, c'était d'avoir des prix justes et stables. Et qu'est-ce qu'on nous a répondu? Accord UE-Mercosur. Ce qu'on nous a répondu aussi, c'est simplification. Mais en fait, la simplification, d'une part, elle s'est traduite surtout par de la dérégulation pour l'agro-industrie et aussi par un changement de règles tous les ans qui fait qu'on c'est encore plus flou et on n'y comprend encore plus rien. Donc voilà, donc ça c'est ce qu'on a vécu, et ce qu'on nous a proposé aussi depuis le mois de juillet, c'est une politique agricole commune avec un budget en baisse, largement renationalisé, et en plus sur les problématiques de la transition, avec aucune garantie sur un budget de transition, avec des taux de cofinancement potentiellement plus importants pour les États membres et donc moins incitatifs. Et donc l'ensemble de ces éléments-là, je crois que ça met beaucoup d'agriculteurs en colère aujourd'hui. Un peu partout en Europe, ça explose en Grèce, ça explose en France. Et en fait, c'est cette colère-là aussi qu'il faut entendre et qu'il faut traiter vraiment, parce que ça donne des monstres dans les campagnes. Et j'insiste là-dessus, ça donne des monstres dans les campagnes. Et donc, il faut absolument s'attaquer aux racines de toutes ces préoccupations-là, de tous ces problèmes-là. Aujourd'hui, on est vraiment en demande de réponses politiques à la hauteur sur l'ensemble de ces enjeux. Et donc la demande qu'on a, nous, elle est très simple, c'est de donner aux agriculteurs de faire la transition. On sait que le modèle agricole, celui qui fonctionne, c'est l'agroécologie, la polyculture-élevage, le pastoralisme, l'association entre les cultures et l'élevage. Enfin, voilà, c'est l'agronomie, quoi, globalement, qui fonctionne très bien. Et ça passe par effectivement la question des prix, qui doit être centrale. Et ça passe aussi par, donc je l'ai dit, ça passe aussi par la vie dans les campagnes et donc le renouvellement des générations. On a effectivement accueilli favorablement la proposition de la Commission sur le Starter Pack. Mais en fait, il y a autre chose qui va avec, c'est la redistribution des aides. C'est ça aujourd'hui qui conduit à l'agrandissement des fermes. Et donc, je voudrais vraiment dire ici qu'il faut absolument avoir une dégressivité et un plafonnement des aides à des niveaux normaux. Aujourd'hui, 100 000 €, un plafonnement à 100 000 €, ça touche 1600 agriculteurs en Europe. 1600 sur les 9 millions. Une dégressivité, c'est 3% de l'ensemble des agricultures françaises, de l'agriculture européenne par contre. Et donc on voit bien que même avec ces propositions-là, qui sont déjà remises en cause par certains, on voit qu'on est sur des niveaux quand même qui sont totalement délirants par rapport à l'ensemble de l'agriculture européenne. Donc voilà, donc ça, ce renouvellement des générations, il est essentiel. Et puis, effectivement, la relocalisation de l'activité, hein, le collègue de Food Drink Europe y en a parlé, il nous faut des outils dans les territoires pour nous accompagner dans la diversification des cultures sur les territoires. Et ça, c'est aussi extrêmement important. Et la PAC a à ce titre une importance évidemment capitale.
Thank you, Mathieu. You've touched upon many important aspects from the regulatory side to the question of pricing, the generational renewal, also the supporting the territories. It brings me also, I think, very nicely back to Marco, because we also discussed the question around the simplification packages and so on. To which extent do you think now then the legislation as it stands helps facilitate the investments needed for the transition of the agriculture sector?
Yeah, as I said at the beginning, I think the problem is indeed this lack of political clarity. Every businessman and businesswoman needs predictability, needs a safe, clear and stable policy environment, which clearly is not the case. We started having a CAP reform debated in 2018 when Commissioner Hogan presented it. Agreed in 2021, the first derogation started almost immediately. Then we had in 2024 the first CAP reform, simplification reform. The second simplification reform is happening now. And in the meantime, we had like a flood of 8 omnibus regulations, which are clearly scrapping clear environmental and health requirements from legislation. Mm-hmm. All this does not provide any clarity and long-term stability. Most importantly, even, what we need to do is to reconsider the way in which we build our food system. Basically, we're now providing a lot of focus and relevance to low costs, to efficiency, much less to long-term sustainability or long-term resilience. So the question is really, how can we give food a different value? We should clearly attach to food the values and the benefit it has with regard to health, environmental sustainability, a creation of jobs, resilience as a global concept. And we can do it, but it requires more rigorous and solid interventions. And we can go into tax breaks for sustainable products. We can go into carbon tax for polluting products. We can start investing more seriously on public procurement, sustainable public procurement. We can have a promotion policy that gives the central role to certain products instead of others. So there are really a plethora of tools that we can use effectively. I don't see them being used right now. And that's, for me, again, the most important problem.
And thanks, Marco. Before I move on to the next question, I would like to give the opportunity to my panelists to respond to one another. Is there any particular comment that struck you or that you would like to respond to? Now is your chance. Stefania.
Yeah, I wanted to say something. I think we're discussing about the divide between market volatility and the need for long-term investments. I think that's clear. One thing that I'm seeing, and so I'm representing some of the largest agribusiness sectors in Europe, is that today physical risks and shocks and price volatility of raw materials they source are discussed all the way into boardrooms. So the sense of urgency that we need to invest in value chain resilience, and this goes all the way down to on-farm resilience, is real. I agree we still need to bridge the gap on how do boardrooms who are actually quarterly managed are able to unlock long-term 6 to 7 to 10 years investments. But I wanted to say that in these times of crises, one thing that is true and sure, and there is a DG Agri and EIB study that with Howden that shows this beautifully, the risks are staggering. 6% of average yield loss per year in Europe on arable crops until 2030. These are, I think, 28 billion per year that are lost. So I think the cost of inaction is really rising, and so the pressure for action, I think, will rise. So I hope we will see more investors, also among agribusinesses, that will invest in value, in resilient agricultural models.
We share the same hope. How do others see it? Yeah, Jan.
Yeah. In addition, what was said, and exactly for the reason you mentioned on CAP. So it's not market-driven, but it's a market for public money, for public goods. There I missed the discussion how to finance on a longer term not only transition but maintenance of sustainable production systems. So what we face today, or in the last CAP periods, we had a growing part of the budget to finance maintenance of sustainable farms, farm systems such as organic or other schemes. And in the current proposal, there's no earmarking for the member states, for the national, regional partnership plans. How much part of the budget? There's a target mentioned of 43% for sustainability, but if you ask, this could be anything in the income support, direct income support. So there we, if this will be not changed by the co-legislators, we risk to get into a phase of lowering the predictability, not transition. So the lump sum payment, what Commissioner Hansen mentioned, is a very good idea. So for the first years of transition, I think that will help, especially young farmers, to enter into the business. But my main question, our main fears is what is the long-term perspective in that respect?
Thank you. Do I have any other responses? Yes, Mathieu.
Par rapport aussi à la table ronde d'avant, je pense que la question des chocs qu'on a vécu déjà depuis le Covid, la guerre d'agression de Russie en Ukraine, et là dernièrement les taxes Trump par exemple, tout ça, ça doit vraiment pousser à changer de paradigme en fait, à la façon, de changer vraiment la façon dont sont conçues les politiques publiques et notamment la politique agricole commune. Et ça, on n'a pas l'impression que ce soit totalement intégré. En tout cas, ça ne l'est pas vraiment dans cette proposition de prochaine PAC. La question notamment des stocks stratégiques qui a été proposée, elle nous semble être une bonne idée. Il faut aller vers ça parce que clairement, on va en avoir besoin. Mais ça doit être aussi un outil qui permette de stabiliser les prix agricoles et de les rendre plus justes. On a aussi toute la question autour de la directive sur le commerce, sur les échanges UTP Trade Practices, qui doit absolument nous permettre à nous, agriculteurs, de vendre au-dessus nos coûts de production et qui doit être revue. Et donc, voilà, la question des chocs, elle est essentielle, et notamment dans la reconception de nos fermes et de ce qui va autour des outils à la fois de transformation, mais aussi de commercialisation, pour être beaucoup plus locaux et de moins dépendre des chaînes de valeur internationales. Et ça nous semble devoir être le combat principal ou le devoir, les objectifs principaux notamment de la prochaine PAC.
Merci Mathieu. Donc je vais continuer en français parce que je voulais poser la question aussi à Caroline. Quand on parle des incitations du marché, en effet pratique, quel est le rôle que vous voyez pour ce type d'incitation? Qu'est-ce que vous...
Alors, merci. Déjà, pour rebondir sur les propos d'avant, mon leitmotiv, c'est que les solutions, il faut construire sur des bases solides. Donc les solutions viennent des acteurs économiques eux-mêmes, donc des producteurs, des industriels, des commerçants, pour pouvoir toujours améliorer leur impact. Après, effectivement, pour pouvoir reconnaître les bienfaits, il faut pouvoir les comptabiliser et que les règles soient les mêmes pour tout le monde et d'avoir des incitations qui ne créent pas des distorsions entre les différents marchés qui pourraient se mettre en place. On est face à une demande du consommateur, une demande du citoyen, une demande du législateur qui est la même. Il faut les mêmes outils, il faut les mêmes modes de calcul. Et pour donner deux exemples d'incitation, ou en tout cas d'essayer de ne pas freiner le développement de ces marchés, c'est d'essayer d'avoir des réglementations qui reconnaissent, alors moi j'ai parlé du secteur laitier, mais qui reconnaissent déjà ce que peut apporter l'élevage, ce que peut apporter l'agriculture comme service positif. Et dans les débats qu'il y a pu y avoir autour de la directive IED, par exemple, qui ont était absolument terrifiant pour les filières d'élevage et notamment la filière laitière française, de pouvoir imaginer qu'une ferme laitière française puisse être considérée comme une unité industrielle comme une autre, et du coup avec les lourdeurs administratives qui vont en face, c'était extrêmement compliqué. Et puis d'avoir aussi des incitations qui passent par la reconnaissance de choses qui peuvent être déjà mises en place par des filières. Et je pense là aussi aux travaux qu'il y avait dans le cadre européen de certification environnementale, où on avait un label qui existait en France et qui n'a pas été reconnu, en tout cas qui ne permet pas encore de reconnaître les atténuations, les impacts de la captation de carbone par les prairies, par exemple. Et c'est seulement les améliorations, les réductions qui sont prises en compte par la réglementation européenne. Donc si on veut pouvoir créer des filières et avoir des incitations, il faut qu'elles puissent être par le marché, par les prix, uniformes et avec des réglementations qui soient adaptées pour reconnaître tous les efforts positifs qui sont faits à tous les niveaux, et notamment par le niveau des acteurs économiques eux-mêmes.
Merci, Caroline. And now I'll switch back to English now that everyone has heard my thick accent. Any responses to the kind of market-driven incentives that we made? Yeah, Jan. I think we could bring a lot of experience from the organics.
Maybe it fits if I understood right what you said. So we need a kind of level playing field when it comes to sustainability performance. So that's what I understood. And I think there we have to discuss very frank what is happening on the market. So when producers group, we heard in the practical examples, single farms, small and big farms, arable products, dairy market, you can't compare it, but when it comes to a single farmer who has to manage his operation and reason his work, his labor, or his investments in a sustainable crop rotation, in a new stable, in a cooperation, in machines, or in pasture. So pasture is very labor intensive, or especially when it is in very mountain areas, even more. So all that creates cost. And then you come yourself or with your producers group or via your processor on the market if you have not direct marketing. And our experience, especially the last years when we try to implement Article 210A CMO, you have to discuss it with your retailers. So not with your consumers, but with the retailers who set the price, who is more or less most powerful in the most powerful position in the market. You know what the regular answer is here in the room? I don't know, but the main answer we get, and we are a big producers group for organic, is so we want to pay you a fair price. But our main competitor is not doing so. And if my main competitor is not doing so, I can pay you a fair price. And this is the normal mechanism. So what we need, and then we discuss it internally with the dairy companies in between the farmers and the retailers, and with the retailers themselves. And nobody has really an answer on this crucial point. We want to create more animal welfare. We want to create more biodiversity. We are discussing finance industry, which I am a farmer myself. I really didn't understand where to create the money for nature credits or nature capital, but maybe someday I learn it, how to finance the work of farmers. But in my simple understanding of markets, we need to discuss how the competition is working when it comes to sustainability, and in that investments to remunerate farmers for climate and biodiversity efforts. This really, dear colleagues, is not working today. In the European market. And I appreciate one sentence more, really the Commission in encouraging ourselves, our producers group, to use, for example, the tripartite treaties, Article 248 or Article 210. But we need more efforts to create new corporations in a competitive world, to focus from the bottom, from the farms, on a resilient and sustainable production system.
Thank you, Jan. I allowed for a long extra sentence. Marco and then Mathieu.
Yeah, thanks a lot. First of all, from a theoretical point of view, market-based mechanisms can provide that some sort of an internalization of externalities. So they translate, the value that that specific food has in terms of social benefits or environmental benefits into income for producers, and that's clearly welcome. If well designed, they can also provide producers with knowledge, with extends advice by advisors. They can be also interesting in terms of stimulating the innovation that farmers has. The European Commission is heading the IEP Agri, the European Innovation Partnership, which is done in cooperation with researchers and to stimulate the spread of knowledge among farmers. So all this is great. However, what we need to do is to seriously address the problems. And as Jan said, the problem is that we have market players that don't have enough incentives to engage. So we do have very good local examples of projects that work, but this is not affecting or benefiting the 9 million farms that we have throughout Europe, and that's where we should focus. One single thing, one critique on the IED, because I've worked a lot on that. I really believe in that legislation. We had a debate, and I'm saying it because I think we need to have a serious debate differentiating certain farmers, the multitude of farmers, and other farmers. In the IED, the Commission proposed to have 150 livestock units as the unit, after which there should have been a permit for pigs, poultry, and cattle. In France, for cattle, there was already the threshold for registration. We went in the political debate up to 520 animals. I asked the agriculture ministers in France to tell me how many farms would have been affected by 520 cattle, and they answered me 7. So there are 7 enterprises in France that had to do the requirements that the IED was imposing, the Industrial Emission Directive. I think that is a debate that we should have. Can we ask 7 enterprises in the whole of France to do something about the emissions that their practices have, and let alone 99.8% of all other farms producing milk in France? I think it is possible. We should not hide ourselves always behind the idea of the brilliant couple of farmers with 1 sheep and buffer strips, because that's not the reality of most European land. Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks, Marco. Mathieu.
Moi, je voudrais prendre un exemple en France, c'est sur le lait bio. Depuis plusieurs années, le nombre de producteurs de lait bio augmente et les volumes aussi. Et suite à l'inflation qu'on connaît depuis 2022, il y a eu une baisse de la demande, et ce qui a provoqué une crise grave dans le secteur du lait bio, avec des prix qui sont tombés. Il y a plusieurs producteurs qui ont arrêté, qui sont partis à la retraite, qui n'ont pas été remplacés. Et du coup, aujourd'hui, nos entreprises nous disent, mais en fait, on va manquer de lait bio en 2026. Et voilà, et donc on en est là où les gens qui sont soit partis à la retraite, soit qui ont arrêté l'agriculture biologique, c'est pas eux qui vont revenir. Et donc on se retrouve avec cette différence de vitesse entre les marchés qui peuvent se retourner très vite parce qu'ils ne sont pas régulés, et la réalité, nous, sur nos fermes, où les cycles de production, pour qu'une vache elle commence à donner du lait, il faut 3 ans ou 2 ans et demi, et en fait, c'est pas du tout les mêmes. Et donc, c'est vraiment pour ça qu'on a besoin d'avoir des outils qu'on n'a pas aujourd'hui dans la politique agricole, notamment dans l'organisation commune des marchés, qui sont rediscutés aujourd'hui au Parlement européen, pour dire, mais si on avait eu des outils financés par la PAC de pouvoir passer du lait bio au conventionnel en rémunérant les producteurs, si on avait pu financer des baisses de la production, si on avait pu encourager la consommation, et ben en fait, on aurait pu garder ces producteurs dont on va manquer dès 2026. Et donc, c'est vraiment aussi cette vision de décalage entre le tempo de nous paysans et la vitesse des marchés qu'il faut aussi avoir en tête si on se donne comme objectif de faire de la transition.
Merci Mathieu. Stefania, would you like to respond and wrap up this round of responses?
Yes, and I wanted to come also with a proposition, because also solutions are what's needed. And I think in this time of scarcity, one of the things that I would really welcome to see now also with the new CAP scheme is how can public programs, so all the CAP pillars, attract more private sector funding? Because what I can say, and of course I represent only 25 large companies that have 800 billion of revenues and have already invested 3 million in regenerative and agroecological farming practices, but they are looking for a leverage effect. They're looking for co-investments, because not even the biggest industrial food business in the world, like Nestle, can finance the agricultural transition alone. So there is a real need for collaboration. And I can share some example of full on-farm, full crop rotation collaborations that I see. Before there was mentioned Covalo, which is pour une agriculture du vivant en France, with one example of territorial approaches. There are other ones like the Landscape Enterprise Network in the UK, in Spain, and in Italy. So these are closed marketplaces for payments for ecosystem services. What I can say, there are some emerging examples of value chain players sharing the costs and risks of the transition together with farmer cooperatives. Another example is in France, Transition avec Vivesia, and actors like Heineken and project developers like Earthworm Foundation. So there are some examples out there, but what the scale is not sufficient. And so I would love to see how public programs can attract more private sector funding, because there are some examples also overseas that have happened in the past where the leverage effect has been times 6. The former US administration had put 3 billion on the table for climate smart agricultural programs. They came up to 18 billion, and the requirements was value chain collaboration. So I think this could be a concrete thing that we would love to work together, because there is a sense of urgency also from the agribusiness sector that sees that the resilience in their value chain is under threat, and they see the need also to co-invest. And so joint programs could work on that. So I would love to work on that with anyone who wants.
Thank you, Stefania. So we have just about 20 minutes left for this session. And I have plenty of questions coming from the audience already on Slido, and I'm sure we're going to have plenty of them from the floor. So I would like to maybe start by taking one from Slido, so I can give you a little bit of time for you to think if you have any questions, and then I'll open the floor to questions from those of you who are present in the room. So the first question that I have, which is the most voted one on Slido, is how to ensure a coherent approach and resilient farming by aligning the common agricultural policy with national climate plans and upcoming national nature restoration plans. I can allow 1 up to 2 answers on this one. So who would like to take their shot?
I mean, we need clear political will to have a coherent approach. I don't want to criticize the Commission on the CAP proposal, but I will. No, sorry. To be honest, the Commission proposal contains clear ways to better target payments, and I think this is very important, because one of the most important criticisms is that the CAP is not delivering money to the farmers that are most in need, and this was agreed by the strategy dialogue in 2024, is written in the vision and in the CAP proposal. There are a number of very good, positive, mandatory requirements for member states when it comes to the environment, for instance, the need to support organic in maintenance and transitions, extensify livestock, even establishing livestock stock intensities when couple support is provided. So things exist. The problem is then the lack of money, because when we look at how the way in which the MFF is structured and the CAP money is structured, then there is no ring-fence money that goes into sustainability. Currently, we have 32% of the CAP money, both first and second pillar, dedicated to environmental measures. In the future, it's up to member states. They have the obligation to provide measures in favor of sustainability, but they can dedicate €1 each That's the reality. So the likely scenario is that they will have climate plans and they will have a national strategic plan not at all related to their national climate plans.
Thank you. Okay, Mathieu and Yann, very briefly, please.
Je vais commencer quand même par un point qui nous paraît important et positif dans la prochaine PAC, c'est pas souvent qu'on dit ça, c'est le fait que de sortir des aides découplées, des droits à paiement découplés, et d'aller vers des aides à ceux qui en ont le plus besoin, et qui nous semble quand même être un changement majeur si ça va jusqu'au bout, et on va se battre pour que ça aille jusqu'au bout, parce que ça, clairement, c'est quelque chose dont on a besoin. Ensuite, dans cette proposition, dans cette question-là, ce qui va être essentiel pour effectivement pouvoir aligner, c'est donner les moyens aux agriculteurs de faire les transitions. Et donc, ça va passer par, avoir un budget sanctuarisé sur les pratiques environnementales. Ça va passer par 2, avoir moins de cofinancement des États membres sur ces budgets-là, parce que clairement, on va avoir des écarts entre les États membres très importants et des motivations des États membres aussi moindres si on avait un taux de cofinancement moins important. Ça passe 3 par la problématique du financement de ce qui est aujourd'hui dans la conditionnalité qu'il faut sortir qu'il ne faut pas financer par de l'argent parce qu'on ne va plus en avoir pour ceux qui vont vraiment plus loin. Et ça passe par 4 sur, on rentre dans la barbarie un peu technique, mais sur le cadre de performance qui aujourd'hui est plutôt de la performance administrative que de la performance environnementale. Et c'est aussi ça qu'il faut changer.
Merci. And Yann.
Yeah.
I have to ask you to be brief.
How to ensure coherence. The approach, a more targeted approach on one side and a more simple architecture goes into a right direction. So that gives a lot of opportunities. Ensuring coherence is just possible if you earmark the budget for sustainability, transition and maintenance. So you have to allocate money for it. That is so simple. Otherwise, you get a race to the bottom on national level, and you harvest incoherence. So I think the seed is possible to grow, but need to really stay a EU coherency level. You need an EU earmarking of the budgets for sustainability.
Thank you. Thanks, Yann.
If I may add just one, we didn't say it, but just results-based payments or outcome-based payments often referred, that could be the coherence that can then go across policies.
Thank you, Stefania. So I will now open the floor for questions. Just please remember to, first of all, introduce yourself. Be short and succinct. And please remember that a question ends with a question mark, and we're talking about questions here. I see lady in red over there. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Birte Steenberg, and I'm the Secretary General of AVEC, the European Poultry Meat Producers. I have a question that goes for the whole panel, and by the way, thanks a lot for an interesting talk you had. And my question is, how do we get the consumers to go with you on this journey? Because there was a Eurobarometer on food safety just in October this year that said that by far the most important thing for consumers is cost. Number 2 is taste. Number 3 is food safety. Number 4 is the origin. Number 5 is the nutrient content. Number 6 is the impact on the environment and climate, and number 7, their ethics and beliefs.
Thank you.
So we're sitting here in Brussels a little bit disconnected from the real world out there. How will you get them connected? Thank you.
Fair point, thank you. And maybe can I take another question from this side of the room? I see another question over here. Yes, please.
Yeah, thanks a lot to the panel. Diana Borgnotto from Citra, Usse-Levant. I'm wondering, this perhaps more for Marco Contiero, but for all the panel, how the environmental stakeholders are strategically reorganizing to push the environmental objectives of the CAP in such of a changing policy landscape. Thanks.
Thank you. So maybe we can start with you this time around, Marco, and then I'll do a round all the way back since we have questions for all of you.
Yeah,
Please take it away.
Start from the second question. Well, we need. Do you hear me? Yeah. Basically, it is extremely difficult. Clearly, as I started, I mean, my presence on this panel was to say that we lack the needed rigorous political will, and by the way, we also need to distinguish, because when we talk about the Commission, there is one specific will, then we go into member states, and therefore the Council, and then the Parliament. And things change depending on which institutions you're looking at. It's likely that the current Parliament, at least given the votes that the MEPs have had in the past 3-4 weeks, is probably the most problematic institutions when it comes to environmental action and political will. And to be honest, I think the only thing we need to do is to be clearer about who is paying for the impacts of the current system. And it's also in relation with a question by Avik. What we need to start doing is internalizing external costs. For the time being, we have been very, very effectively socialized costs and privatized gains. That's what we have done very, structurally and successfully. We need to start internalizing externalities. We need market prices to account for the negative externalities, but we also need to start accounting for the positive externalities, like in the case of organics, and therefore have a system that truly represents the actual value of certain food. In that sense, we should buy organic products for less than conventional products. I hate going outside and paying for subsidies going in the majority to conventional farming and having to pay more to buy organic farming.
Thank you, Marco.
In that sense, we could address, I'm really sorry, the consumer's reaction to prices and other values.
Thank you. Do I any additional answers on the consumer perspective? How do we bring them on board? I'll start with Caroline.
Oui, merci. Effectivement, la première demande du consommateur, c'est le prix. Et c'est pour ça qu'il est absolument indispensable de lui apporter toute la confiance et de mettre en place des dispositifs qui permettent de mettre en synergie tous les dispositifs incitatifs et d'accompagnement, que ce soit par la politique agricole commune, que ce soit par des cofinancements privés ou que ce soit par des démarches de progrès des acteurs économiques eux-mêmes, pour justement pouvoir montrer l'ensemble de la démarche et pouvoir toujours fournir aux consommateurs des produits accessibles. Et au sein des acteurs des filières, il y a aussi la nécessité que chacun soit bien convaincu et conscient qu'ils sont en concurrence loyale sur ces thématiques. Et c'est vrai que c'est là où on a un travail à jouer tous ensemble pour que cette caractérisation de l'impact environnemental de ces améliorations puisse permettre de capter un maximum de valeur et de la répartir. Parce que sinon, on aura tout perdu. C'est ce qu'on avait fait à une époque sur trop de démarches de segmentation détruisent de la valeur dans les filières.
Thank you. And Diane and Mathieu.
Yeah, very short. On the consumer question, so it's a questionnaire like many questionnaires. They are just a picture of the reality. And if you look at the biggest European organic market in Germany, we are facing a development this year of a total growth between 7 to 10% in the average. So that's a consumer language. So they are buying more organic. But our main problem today is that it's not enough remunerating the farmers, so that the farmers in the last years didn't start to convert to transition. So you always need both. You need incentivizing consumers, and the best way is to do it through retailers and processors and farmers investing in new offers. And that was happened in the German market, and that's why it is growing. So people like it, and now we have again to invest in the trust of farmers, that they really have confidence in the organic production system.
Thank you. Mathieu.
Sur la question des consommateurs, moi je pense que c'est essentiel aussi d'adresser la question de est-ce qu'on a le choix en fait de consommer. Quand on sait en Europe aujourd'hui, on a à peu près 10% des Européens qui font appel à l'aide alimentaire. On a à peu près, je sais pas, 20-30% de gens qui n'ont pas des budgets suffisants pour pouvoir choisir leur alimentation. Et donc on génère aussi un mécontentement fort dans la population européenne, des gens qui ne peuvent pas choisir leur alimentation en fait. Et donc après la question c'est est-ce qu'on doit aller vers une nourriture encore moins chère qui détruit l'environnement, qui ne rémunère pas ses paysans? Est-ce que c'est ça le choix qu'on fait? Ou alors est-ce que c'est de dire, mais en fait, comment est-ce qu'on donne à nos concitoyens le pouvoir de choisir leur alimentation? Ça s'appelle le droit à l'alimentation, qu'on défend nous à la Via Campesina. Et donc évidemment, ça passe par la question de la répartition de la richesse, hein, sur les salaires, sur les minima sociaux, évidemment. Ça passe aussi par de la régulation, hein, on peut parler de la régulation des marchés publicitaires sur l'agroalimentaire, par exemple. Ça passe par de l'affichage. Ça passe aussi par de la commande publique, hein. Il y a le School Scheme dans la PAC, qui est un outil quand même assez essentiel et qu'il faudrait voir développer. Il y a aussi la question de l'accessibilité de l'environnement alimentaire. En fait, il y a plein de gens qui ne peuvent pas consommer de produits bio locaux juste parce qu'ils n'ont pas de magasin ou ils n'ont pas de service à côté de chez eux. Et donc, on a besoin de repenser aussi tout un système alimentaire dans le but de le rendre à la fois plus durable et aussi plus résilient.
Thank you. So I'm going to take another question from Slido. It's also the most voted one right now, which says that with the current omnibus packages, mandatory environmental measures are becoming voluntary. How can we ensure that the EU agri-food sector's transition towards sustainability if there is no minimum requirements that reward the environmental, biodiversity-friendly farming practices? So we're talking a bit, let's say, do we need more mandatory measures? Do we leave it as voluntary? What are some thoughts here? Jan.
Very brief, and that is the experience of all our discussions in the European region, in the strategic dialogue. The majority of the farming community is open to invest in more sustainable farm systems. So that is clear. If it's remunerated, if it's paid, and the big majority wants to be remunerated by the market and by fair prices. Farmers are not asking for mandatory requirements. They are asking for a good framework which is incentivize their logic investments in diverse crop rotations or in animal welfare stables. That is my experience.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other thoughts? I can see.
If I may. When it comes to environmental rules, which used to be mandatory and now are voluntary or disappear completely, the concerns is also economic. When we have the European Commission, the DG Environment, coming out with a study that says that the lack of implementation of environmental law in Europe causes 180 billion euros of damages every year, we should get attentive to what that means. When we have international data that tell us that 65%, the JRC actually, not even international, European data, 65% of the gross value added, which basically measures the economic strength of our economic system in Europe, is dependent on nature. And out of it, 36% is highly dependent on nature, which means that 1/3 of our economy depends on the status of nature. It's clear that we need to have rules that do not put the burden exclusively on certain sectors like farmers. So we need to address seriously how it is possible to encourage farmers to engage, to risk. And if we want business people to risk, we need to provide them with a political clarity, money, so it's creating the incentives for the private sector to join. But it has to be clear if the message is, we're going to change some rules because now farmers are making a lot of noise and so, but maybe in 6 months' time we're not going to do that and we're changing again. That sort of lack of clarity, seriousness and predictability is very damaging for everybody, for the society as a whole. And we should change it and be more serious about political coherence and directions.
Thanks, Marco. Mathieu.
Je vais prendre l'exemple de ma ferme, de mon territoire. En fait, la peur, c'est qu'il n'y ait ni l'un ni l'autre. Et c'est un peu ce qui se passe en ce moment. C'est-à-dire que moi, sur mon territoire, les agriculteurs de mon territoire qui souhaiteraient s'engager vers des pratiques plus protectrices dans l'environnement, ils n'ont pas trop le choix. C'est soit ils s'engagent dans l'agriculture biologique, donc là, il y a de l'argent, ou c'est tout. Et en fait, il n'y a aucun dispositif de la PAC accessible sur mon territoire qui permette justement de prendre ce risque-là et de s'engager à réduire les pesticides, à avoir un élevage plus à l'herbe. Et ça, c'est malheureusement une question budgétaire parce qu'il n'y a pas assez d'argent pour... Donc c'est les mesures agro-environnementales et climatiques. Du coup, il n'y a qu'un quart du territoire national qui est ouvert aux agriculteurs qui souhaiteraient s'engager dans ces pratiques-là. Et pour les autres, il n'y a rien. Et donc, en fait, on laisse aussi tomber les agriculteurs en leur disant, mais en fait, débrouillez-vous tout seuls. Donc, il n'y a ni obligation, enfin de moins en moins en tout cas, et ni programme volontaire. C'est ça le problème.
Thank you, Mathieu. So, we are nearing the end of the session, but I would maybe like to give some final round of final statements, maybe to Stefania and Caroline as well, so that we can wrap up the discussion. Maybe Stefania could get us started, and then I can finish with Caroline.
No, thank you. First, thank you again also for the invitation. And what I want to say is that the whole value chain and also so agribusinesses have a seat at the table. They are also see the risks and want to share the cost of the transition across the value chain. I think the most important message I would like to leave you is we would love to work from some disjointed and scattered incentives. Martin was just making an example, not having access through ADEM or through other programs to incentive programs to how do we bundle incentives. And I actually have just an example in France. I know in Britain, in Normandy, there are two projects where l'ADEM and Livelihood Fund, which is a project developer, they disperse the funds together. It's a great example of a one-stop financing shop. Less administrative burden for the farmer, access to more euro per hectare of transition because they are piling up public and private incentives. So there's some scattered examples out there. How do we make those voluntary schemes scale? And that's what I would love to work on. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you. And Caroline.
Oui, merci. Et merci encore pour votre invitation et la richesse de cette table ronde. J'avais envie de dire pour terminer qu'on a tous la même attente des consommateurs et des citoyens, la même ambition collective d'améliorer l'impact environnemental et climatique, mais une multitude de manières d'y arriver et une multitude d'opérateurs économiques qui doivent tous activer des leviers et qu'on doit avoir pour ambition de mettre en synergie pour être capitalisé sur toutes les positives de tous les uns et les autres. Et comme nous, on l'a fait en ayant un même outil de diagnostic, de même identification de levier pour que chacun puisse être acteur de cette transition et chacun puisse être acteur à la fois sur sa ferme, à la fois dans une entreprise ou à la fois en tant que politique publique ou acteur économique pour financer ces transitions.
Thank you, Caroline. And I love finishing with this message of there's so many actors here on the table. We need to find the synergies. We need to row in the same direction. So I think this is a nice way to finish with this discussion. There's so many things that I've noted down in terms of the big challenges and also the opportunities involved, from the need of harmonization to how do we answer to the concerns of farmers, of agricultures. The question around strategic autonomy is crucial, and it has come up consistently over the course of today. The need for political will, the balancing between the long-term perspective versus the short-term market volatilities, and also questions around generational renewal came up. But I think most importantly, I think it's indeed this final message that how can we together unlock these incentives, these opportunities that at the end of the day will bring us to a more sustainable agricultural sector, considering that it's not a choice anymore, indeed. So, well, a lot to take in, I think. So I would like to ask everyone to give my panelists a big round of applause, because it's been a really